You become that leader because you are good or successful at what it is you do. It can be quite difficult to then be empathetic if your team or team members or people in your business are not as good, if you want to call it that way, or committed as you do. And I think that's something that I kind of struggled with at first, to understand that each individual plays a different part within your team. You can't have 11 superstars in a football team all wanting to kick the ball in the net at the end.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have a team where everybody has a different position, everybody has a different skill set. And I think once I realised that and realised, the benefit, I think I really started to understand, well, if I can show that empathy and understand that with them, and I can give them the best possible opportunity to perform at their highest level.
You're listening to the Life and Leadership Podcast, where leaders from across the globe share openly about the trials, triumphs, and lessons learned along the leadership journey. Whether you're a seasoned, new, or aspiring leader, get ready to receive powerful insights and practical takeaways to help you grow in your leadership. And now, here is your host, Mary Eniolu.
Welcome to the Life and Leadership Podcast. Today I've got with me Scott Brown, a 22-year veteran of hospitality, whose career started with Marriott Hotels in operational roles before a transition to sales early in his career and a rapid rise through the ranks of the company. Living as UK account manager for Marriott's national sales team, Scott took the challenge as director of sales at Manchester's first 5-star hotel, the Lowry Hotel, before moving to Melia Hotels in 2020 to set up their UK North area. In late 2022, Scott added 3 London hotels to the existing UK North hotels as he was handed the reins of the UK sales team with around 70 million turnover and a multi-location team of 25. Scott, it's wonderful to have you on the Life and Leadership Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
It's wonderful to have you here, and I'm looking forward to our conversation. What I would like you to start us off with, if you don't mind, is tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are today.
I'm Scott Brown. I'm the Director of Sales for the UK for Melia Hotels International. Melia is a Spanish brand originally, but now a global brand with over 400 or close to 400 hotels worldwide, every continent, many different countries. It began as a resort brand and sort of holiday brand, obviously in Spain, but it's grown to a premium luxury brand with resorts, urban hotels, lifestyle hotels, and a real lovely mix of kind of 4 and 5-star properties. I personally started my career in hotels 22 years ago. I began my career in hospitality as a lot of people do, really, kind of falling into it, really, doing a job whilst I was at university, part-time, to earn a little bit of pocket money as such. And I started in a hotel in Manchester, where I'm from, which was a Marriott Hotel. There I did a number of different roles operationally and really got under the skin of what hotels and hospitality was. And then post-university, I did a gap year. I went to the US and travelled and did some work there. And then I knew when I was coming back that I knew that I wanted to work in sales. That's what I knew. My father had worked in sales, so I kind of believed in or knew I had a penchant, had it in me to work in sales. And my dad gave me some really great advice, which I've always took with me and I've always shared with my teams. I told him I wanted to work in sales, and he said, you can absolutely do that, Scott. You've got it in you. He said, but my advice to you is sell something that you believe in, because you can sell something you don't believe in. You've got the skills, but you've got to kind of look at yourself in the mirror every night. You've got to be happy with what you're doing, and to do that, it's great if you're doing that with a product company that you believe in. And because I'd worked with Marriott in that part-time capacity, and I'd really bought into the Marriott way, and Marriott were very good at developing its people, their associates as they called them, really kind of believed in that mantra of look after your people. Your people will look after the guest, and the guest will
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah.
So I really bought into that, and so I thought, yeah, I can sell that. I can sell that, whatever that is, however you sell that, I can do that. And I kept in contact with the team at Marriott. Thankfully, they had an entry-level sales role for me. Started off just selling gym memberships in their leisure club, which was a great grounding for me as a salesperson. Learning the skills of sales, needs analysis, and listening more than you speak, and providing solutions for the customer, and then asking for the business, making the sale. I learned all of that very well there, and then progressed my career throughout Marriott into multiple different roles: sales manager, director of sales, national sales. I ended up as an account manager in their national team, selling all of their properties across the UK. Before then, making some decisions to leave Marriott and continue my career elsewhere. Just kind of fast forward through that next bit brought me up to the kind of present day, looking after the UK for Melia.
That is an interesting career. I smiled when you said, you're talking about the learning you had to do, listening more than you speak. And I'm thinking, not all salespeople do that actually, but
yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult. I say that to people. Sometimes we used to say, don't be sales sick over somebody. Don't just sell over them and just talk over them, because understanding what they want and then selling them what they actually want, not what you think they want,
exactly,
is a big one.
Yeah, I mean, developing listening skills is really beneficial anyway, but I would imagine more so in sales. But that's a really interesting journey. And now you're UK Director of Sales. So you must have been through lots of experiences, learned a lot to get to where you are today. So if I was to ask you to cast your mind back over your career, what would you say has been the most impactful experience you've had, a life-defining moment, perhaps you could say, that continues to impact on you today?
Yeah, really good question. I really look back. I think the particular hotel that I worked at, the brand that I worked at, I was still very junior. I was working part-time, and they held a huge event at one of their hotels. It was actually down in Bournemouth, and it was such a big event that they asked team members to come from all over the country to come down and support and work on this event. It was actually the Labour Party conference, so the annual Labour Party conference, which took place that year in Bournemouth, and the Bournemouth Marriott was the host venue slash hotel. And I vividly remember, again, I was very junior. We went down on a little bus from Manchester, 10 different team members from the 3 Marriott hotels in Manchester at the time. And we had kind of 4 days, 5 days there. And the scale of the operation, the organisation involved, because you can imagine the security on site, the whole venue is locked down, snipers on the roof, grids sealed up and checked, all of this level of security and the level of detail then in the service that we were delivering. We were each in different rooms serving sort of heads of state and different visitors that were coming over to the Labour Party conference, etc. So I think seeing that level of detail and that level of excitement that was around the event, the preparation for weeks and months that have gone into that event, and then delivering it, I think that was probably a real defining moment for me in terms of seeing the importance of what we can deliver in hospitality to such a big event, such a big organization. Was so important, obviously to the people involved and to the wider community. I guess it felt important to be there, and I think that's something where I remember one of my old sort of mentor hoteliers, hotel general managers, telling me about how, in history, hotels are kind of the center of a community, or the center of, things happen in hotels, deals are done, people meet. If you look throughout history, and I think, yeah, that was quite defining for me to see that and fall in love with, I suppose, hotels as being an integral part of either a culture or a city or a country or whatever it might be, in that sense, because of how big that event was. He just kind of fell in love with the part that hotels and hospitality played within that.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now, I mean, obviously, you've had a very successful career. You're UK Director of Sales. That is a big job. What would you say is been, if you had to nail down maybe three things you could say is being responsible, I suppose, for your success, what would those three be?
I would definitely say, I mentioned my father at the top, and he's definitely a big inspiration for me. He was a sales director himself, not in hospitality, not in hotels. But I think the strong inspiration and strong kind of mentorship, if that's the right thing to say. It's not so much mentorship, but it's more just the example, really, of what a good sales / leader / professional is. I think that is one thing that's really important. I do think, again, secondarily, that upbringing within Marriott. I was there for such a long time, and I think their kind of commitment to developing people and setting standards, and the particular hotel that I was at was also somewhat of a new hotel and a very strong performing hotel. So the leadership team that it had at that time was very strong, very strong. All went on to do great things from that hotel afterwards, and it developed a culture within that team of performance. So I think that is really important. And then I think when I moved from into that director of sales role, leaving Marriott, I moved to the Lowry Hotel in Manchester, which was an independent hotel. And I think moving into leadership and understanding, making that jump from, we say it a lot around new and emerging leaders, right? You generally become a manager or a director because you're good at whatever it is you do. Nobody then teaches you to be a good leader or a good manager, right? I was a good salesperson. I was a good, and that's true in all different industries. So I think making that move, that was really impactful for me to then grow into and understand the leadership piece, and really be open to learning more about leadership and taking in as much of that information as I could to then impart that to try and become a good and purposeful leader.
Yeah. So I mean, you're absolutely right. That's very common, where people are promoted because they're fantastic at the job they do, and obviously, if there's an opening for leadership in that department, they're the ones that get it. But like you say, it's a completely different ball game when you actually step into leadership. And so the importance of that support, the development, is so key, isn't it? Basically, in a nutshell, what I got from what you were saying was people do what people see, I suppose.
Yeah,
people
right.
do what people see. And your father may not have even considered that he was mentoring you or deliberately leading you, but clearly he was. So that takes me to my next question. What's leadership to you? How would you define leadership?
And for me, it's removing the barriers for my team to excel, to do their job well, and to enjoy what they're doing, and to feel, to develop and to feel successful and valued and good at what they do. That's my job, is to remove those barriers. So whatever those barriers are, whether they are skills barriers, and we need training and development, whether they're confidence barriers, and we need, personal development within there, whether they are practical barriers of systems or the resources to do whatever it is they need to do. It's my job to remove those barriers, so that once we do, the good people can rise to the top and be successful, and that pays us back in the business because it delivers and drives results. ultimately.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah. So
yeah,
empowering people to deliver, empowering people to perform at their highest potential, basically, empowering people to be the best they can be and do the best they can do. And I love that you mentioned enjoy what they do, because when we enjoy what we do, we tend to excel at it. So
yeah,
as a leader, then you consider your role to be empowering people and creating the right environment, because when we talk about enjoyment, it's the environment, is the people we work with, it's, how we relate with each other. It's all of that that causes us
mm,
to thrive in what we do. It's not just the skill set, is it? Let's talk a little bit about empathetic leadership. So how would you define empathetic leadership?
uh, do you know, this is something that I think I struggled with, and I think it's good to talk about when you struggle, right? We can all talk about how good everyone is, theory of everything, but I think it's good to talk about when you struggle with something.
Mm,
And I'll tell you why. Empathetic leadership for me, empathy for me is obviously understanding somebody else's viewpoint, where somebody else is coming from, understanding that, and then obviously the leadership part is imparting your leadership then to meet the goals and the targets that you have. And what I think is sometimes a struggle for a leader, again, and perhaps a new leader, you become that leader because you are good or successful at what it is you do. It can be quite difficult to then be empathetic if your team or team members or people in your business are not as good, if you want to call it that way,
mm,
or committed as you do. And I think that's something that I kind of struggled with at first, to understand that getting the most out of each individual, and also the fact that each individual plays a different part within your team. You can't have 11 superstars in a football team all wanting to kick the ball in the net at the end.
mm-hmm,
You have to have a team where everybody has a different position, everybody has a different skill set, and everybody uh, uh, commits that to the cause to get you to the result. And I think that's what I kind of learned is that everybody has their different role to play. Everyone has their different skills. Everyone has their different motivating factors. Um, Carrot and stick, if you want to be really basic with it, but everybody has that different motivator for them for performance. And I think once I realised that and realised, the benefit of that, and that people bring different things to the table. Um, I think I really, really started to understand, well, if I can show that empathy and understand that with them, I can get the most out of them and I can give them the best possible opportunity to perform at their highest level.
mm. I really love the way you're approaching empathetic leadership, because often when people hear that word empathy, they tend to think, oh, it's a fuzzy word, it's too soft, the job needs to be done. As a leader, just go on ahead and get the job done. But what I'm hearing you actually say is, to be an empathetic leader, it's not actually a weak thing. It's actually listening and looking at your team and seeing where they're good and what they're great at, rather than coming from a narrow-minded point of view and putting somebody down or thinking
Mm,
they're not good enough because they're not meeting up to the standard that you set for
yeah.
them, and they're not doing things the way you expect them to do it. It's actually looking beyond that and thinking, well, everybody's valuable. Everybody
Mm,
brings something valuable to this team. So why don't we just look at what this person can bring, what this person is good at, and help them, like you say, remove the barriers so they can be
mhm,
good at what they do, and look at the team dynamics and look at what everybody brings and understand we don't all bring the same thing. I love also that you mentioned motivation. We don't all get motivated the same way. It's so easy as leaders. I did a video the other day, I haven't put it out on LinkedIn yet, about the I in team. We said there's no I in team, and that is true. When we say there's no I in team, we mean the team is, the collective is more important than the individual. So no one single individual is more important than the collective. But the team is made up of I's.
mm,
And as a leader, it's important that you understand the individual I's so you
mm.
can get the best out of them, so that as a team, we're stronger. If you're enjoying this conversation, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. That will help us bring more inspiring conversations to you and reach more people. And if you know of a leader that should be featured on the Life and Leadership podcast, please reach out to us with their details. We would love to hear from you.
It's about showing vulnerability as well as a leader, which is something that I struggled with because again, as a performer, a high performer, you don't show that you're vulnerable or you can't do something or you're struggling because you're a hustler, you're a performer, but showing that vulnerability to your team, when you're not at 100% or when you do fail or you get something wrong or you don't know something, or I think that allows your team to see that you're a human being also. And whilst you might be setting the standard and setting targets to show that you are human also, I think allows them to then believe your empathy, because there's nothing worse than, and again, I think we talked about it at the leadership conference the other week, when we talk about radical candor and building trust with your team. There's nothing worse than ruinous empathy. That empathy that is false, that is there to kind of try to make someone feel like they're being empathized with, when actually you're that's done with an ulterior motive, or you're doing it because you don't have a trustworthy relationship with them because they haven't seen any vulnerability or they just don't trust you. I think that's a really interesting concept.
Or you're just doing it because you want them to be able to do something else.
You want to get something out of them.
Yeah. No, but what are some of the benefits you have seen, approaching leadership with empathy? What are some of the benefits you have seen in doing that?
I think it's easier to have your team. You mentioned it before, or we mentioned it when talking about being happy and then therefore performing because they're happy. It's easier to get your team to work hard and put in what's necessary when you have that trust or that empathy or that kind of loyalty from them. And I think by showing that empathy, by showing them that you understand, or that you'll do everything you can to understand their position, their differences, their needs, I think you get that back from them. And I can give you an example. Right now, we have a team, one of our teams in one of our hotels, or a cluster team that looks after our groups and events in London, and they've had a challenging time. New team, people leaving, high pressure, and the team have bonded together after a difficult period, and have I think felt the empathy and the support and the leadership from myself and my manager, etc. And I don't ask them to stay later in the office when that extra hour gets needed to be done. I don't ask them to go out of their way and above and beyond to do certain things. And I'm seeing it. Their line manager is away this week and last week, and I'm seeing it. I'm seeing them doing it without the need for any. They're not doing it for any other reason other than they care to get the job done because of the empathy and the journey and the leadership and the support that we've gone through with that team over the past few months.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
it's a lot harder to mandate them to, you must stay later and you must do this extra and you must, that's.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I talk about discretionary goodwill, so we have got the contractual obligation of those that work for us, but then there is just so much you can put in that contract. You can't put persistence in the contract, for instance. You can't put creativity. You have to be creative in solving problems. All those are things that we give discretionarily because we will want to. And there were 3 words you used. You used care, they care. You use the word trust, it builds trust. And you use the word loyal, they become loyal to you. And as a leader, really, those 3 words are powerful. That's what you want from your team. You want them to care, you want them to be loyal, you want them to trust. But then showing empathy and trying to understand them. Well, Stephen Covey, isn't it? I said, seek first to understand, then to be understood. So seeking first to understand, listening first before you speak, all those things build trust because it shows that you care for me. I'm a big fan of John Maxwell. I may have mentioned him to you when we spoke first. And he says there are three questions people are often asking of their leaders. Do you care for me? Can you help me? Can I trust you? And so when you are empathetic, when you listen before you speak and all of that, you're telling them, I care for you. You're telling them, you can trust me. You're telling them, I can help you because I want to help you. And you were saying that, removing the barriers, helping people win. And when you help empower people to win, and then the win comes and they see the part they played in that win, it makes them feel valuable. It makes them feel I am somewhere where I'm valued, where I mean something. I'm not just a number. I'm actually contributing something here. And I think for most of us, I think really that's what we want. We don't just want to go to work, do a job and go home. We want to feel like we're a part of something. So that's really, really powerful. Right. So I'm going to ask you then, if you had to pick one person to say thank you to, looking back on your 20 years, you said in this industry, and you're probably the third person I've interviewed on the Life and Leadership podcast. I've spent their whole career in the hospitality industry. So there must be something good happening there. But if you could look back and you had to pick one person to say thank you to, who will that person be and why?
I would probably name my first director of sales leader, a lady called Nicola Staley. Nikki, she's not in hospitality right now, but she was my first sort of manager, mentor, and I think what I learned the most from Nikki was probably that human touch, that empathy that we're talking about. I think that was the thing that I learned most from her. I probably had other leaders who were more analytical or more aggressive with their sales focus, etc., etc. But Nikki's personal touch, she made her team and her clients feel like she really cared about each and every one of them. There was no transactionary sale with Nikki. Nobody could walk away from being salty by Nikki and have buyer's remorse. Nobody felt like I bought that then and I shouldn't have done or whatever. She really kind of showed me that side. I think of working and she took a chance on me, which I think is another thing. That's a balancing act too, because I know that I take some of that with me when I recruit people. There are times where I've taken a chance on people and doesn't always work. But at the time, I certainly felt like she took a chance on me because I was very junior. I was coming from a different department, and I had all of the bravado of youth, which needed shaping and channeling, shall we say. And she definitely did that and put me on a path to. I still say some of the things that she said. I still talk about some of the things that she did and said. So that was 20 years ago. So
I was just going to say, and how many years ago was this?
Yeah, that's 20 years ago.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, leaders are so powerful. I think, again, John Maxwell says everything rises and falls on leadership. Everything rises and falls on leadership. And that is so true. If something is happening, it's because the leader is either making it happen or they're allowing it to happen. And if you're a good leader, you can make someone great at their job. But if you're a great leader, you can actually change someone's life. And that sounds to me what you're describing about Nikki, that she's left such a huge impact on you, that 20 years on, that is still influencing and impacting not just you, but those that you lead now. And so that just for me is the impact and the influence of leadership. Leaders influence things. We influence people, we influence solutions, we influence environments. We make such a huge difference to people's lives. You never know, but you could be the difference between whether they're going to have a good evening when they get back home with their spouse, with their children. So you impact on the children, you impact on whether daddy's going to come home all smiles and happy or whether he's going to be grumpy, and so it impacts on so many things. So it's so important to as a leader to understand the role that you play is beyond what you're trying to achieve in your work environment. The Life and Leadership Podcast is brought to you by Can Do Academy, where we help organizations develop high-performing teams and extraordinary leaders. To find out more about our work, visit candoacademy.net. And do join us for part 2 of this episode.
Thank you for listening to the Life and Leadership Podcast. If you enjoyed the conversation, hit the subscribe button. That will help us reach more people and inspire more leaders. See you on the next episode.